domestic violence, such as childhood sexual abuse,
Mm-hmm.
abandonment, and physical battery.
Right.
So I'm assuming that those are at least four of the key areas or issues that you believe interfere with women of color and our grounding.
I believe that. I believe that it even goes deeper than that. With the book, I deal with how the church, as both an institution and an ecclesial body, have tried to handle or tried to respond to the ailments of women of color. However, you're exactly right when you say that.
Well, you're exactly right. In your words.
We are exactly right when we say that, because yes, the physical barriers of domestic violence, a lot of people perpetuate, and I'm kind of getting comfortable now, so I'm just now getting to the place where I'm comfortable. I was trying to but the psychological barriers that affect women the most, especially within their own households, are domestic violence, childhood sexual abuse, and battery. And battery is not just a physical battery. It's also mental, economic battery. There's economic abuse, as to where the societal norms have said that women, or at least the societal norms that are shaped by the institutional church. And I say that very carefully because I'm also dealing as a black woman with the black church. So I can only speak from where I am. So I can't say how it is out in other churches that are predominantly white. But I do know that these same elements do exist for women in general. But for women of color, these attacks that happen create a state of trauma. And what ends up happening is the trauma that is created from violation. And so in my book, I also talk about Erik Erikson's theory of adult development, where at the foundation of adult development, we have one of the virtues that is supposed to be brought forth is the virtue of being able to trust. If you cannot trust someone, then you cannot have a relationship with someone. And so when you trust someone with your elements, with your body, with your protection, with your mind, when you trust someone and they violate that trust, it can leave a traumatic scar on your life. Now, we can get deeper into what I talk about as far as the genetic DNA makeup, our hippocampus, which is responsible for restoring memories. It's responsible for our fight, flight, or freeze hormones and endorphins that go through our bodies. So whenever someone presents a situation that has caused us trauma in the past, whether it be domestic violence, it could be something sexual, because many women have suffered under the hands of child sexual abuse, and it's right in their own families. A lot of times strangers are not the ones who abuse children. It's usually someone that they know. It's someone that they, here's the big T word, they trust. When that trust is broken, being that trust is at the foundation of every relationship, we can find now that when a person has not gained the virtue of trust, that all of their relationships will begin to suffer.
Well, then let's stay there for a moment,
okay,
and focus on development, because
okay,
I can tell, like, your knowledge is very extensive. So I'm going to try and reel
bring
us
it back.
in.
Yeah,
I'm
bring me
try
back.
And bring us back a little bit. And so I'm going to read another excerpt that deals with what we're talking about. And I want us to focus on this statement. So we hear a lot in our community about mental health.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a lot about healing.
Right.
And so I want to take us in the direction of what healing would look like for women and for women of color in the midst of this statement.
Okay.
Due to the poor economic condition of the survivors, most of the counseling these individuals receive will not address their current sexual behavior
mm-hmm.
or deal with the underlying issues.
Right.
So let's talk about the underlying issues. So you talked a little bit about trust and how trust is developed or underdeveloped.
Right.
So what are some of the underlying issues that prevent us sometimes from moving forward in our development?
Well, not having the proper care. So with that statement, I was alluding to how the healthcare disparity that we're currently seeing especially during this pandemic, has also always existed in the mental health care field. A lot of times people are not able to afford, or they have no interest. And we have to unpack that statement. We have to look at our Black society. We have to look at how we've had this mantra that has been passed down: whatever happens in this house stays in this house. When you look at the color purple, which many people have seen, especially people of our generation have seen the color purple, where the man, the father, the stepfather, basically he rapes Celie, and then he tells her, "You better not tell nobody but God, because this kind of this will kill your mama." So we think about those kind of situations that have perpetuated in our lifespan, in our whole DNA. It's in our whole genetic makeup. And so these are some of the underlying barriers that are already there for us as Black women.
And you also related that to economics. So really, it sounds like poverty plays a key role in some of those underlying issues. The neglect, the behaviors of the abusers sound like poverty is one of those underlying issues.
Poverty, or the inability to afford the right type of counseling. And so
talk to me about what the right type of counseling would look like.
Well, the thing about it is, you're only able to get a 30-minute session based on what type of insurance you have. So if you live within a poorly developed economic strain, and then you don't have things like health care provided for your jobs. Many women of color are working part-time or working per diem, not able to afford, and then we have to work more than one job. Now, these are some of the issues I'm dealing with right now. We often have to work more than one place of employment, or have more than one stream of income, which means we don't even have access to the care. Right? We don't have access to the proper health care, whether it be a regular physician, mental health, psychological health, whether it's specialty care services, cancer, anything of that nature. We don't have those type of things because, number one, our jobs don't offer it. Then one of the other issues that I'm currently dealing with is, now, if we are paid within a certain bracket, that's more than enough to get us on, to help us to keep a subsidy, but we're still underpaid and not offered the health care coverage that we need through our employers, or we have to, it's taking so much out of our paychecks that we're not even able to afford the company's health care, the deductibles that they take out of our paychecks. So yeah, poverty is a big thing. If you're on subsidies, your insurance probably doesn't cover the type of therapy that you would need, right? Or the time that you need the therapy, because that market is saturated.
So
number
listen,
one.
I'm hoping my therapist is listening to this show, because she does not take my insurance. And so the hourly rate.
Right. You can't afford it. So people often turn to the church.
Come on.
Right? They turn to the church. The church has been the hub of where people can act out, basically, where women or men or anyone who is suffering under psychological or spiritual trauma can go to the church and they can act out. And so we're talking Black church culture. This is also a cultural thing as well. And so with Black church culture, to be able to go and praise and sing and dance and shout and cry and snot and roll on the floor if you want to, because of all of the things that have been stored in your spirit, stored in your soul, all of the memories from any types of trauma, any types of abandonment, any type of abuse, any type of psychological disorientation, even grief. Because a lot of people, and I didn't mean to go that far, but even people who suffer from grief, where is the place for the Black woman to go and find healing? Because we can't go to these institutions. They don't offer it. They don't offer the healthcare plan that we need. And then they often don't touch the spiritual nature or the spiritual culture of where we come from. Worship is therapeutic for women of color, especially those who are women of faith. Right, in the Black church. So if someone hinders our worship or our ability to worship, then what ends up happening, now we have retained more spiritual trauma because we have no outlet. It's like being in a house that someone has hoarded any and everything, and you can't, you literally can't breathe.
Have you ever read the book, The Shelter of One Another?
I have not.
Okay, well, in this book, the author speaks about families, especially families living in poverty, living in houses without walls. And when you live in a house without walls, then you are susceptible to all of the outside elements coming in and destroying the structure of that family.
Right, exactly. And with me being a womanist, a lot of people, and I want to make the distinction, womanism is not feminism. There's a big distinction.
Explain.
Okay, so womanism is a word that was coined by Alice Walker, who's the writer of Color Purple. In the history, it was to be womanish, or womanish is when you had a lot of pride and you knew that you were going to be successful, which was sometimes frowned upon by, of course, male counterparts, which would be sexism, and of course, whites who practice in racism. So we have those two elements coming against us. Feminist, on the other hand, is predominantly birthed out of a white movement. So it talks to the issues of women, but not necessarily the women of color, because we have two elements that we have to deal with, the racism and the sexism, as to where white women who have, been able to experience privilege in these United States of America don't have to worry about the racism factor. They have to worry more about the sexism factor. So the sexism thing and the pushback against sexism for feminist movements are, I can do it all by myself. I could do it all by myself. I know we got to get ready to take a break.
Nope,
but this, okay. So I can do it all by myself. And then what ends up happening now is with the womanist movement, the womanists are, I am able to do it myself, but I need my whole structure, the whole family dynamic to be present. I need my black men to be able to work and help me provide. I'm able, very well equipped, but that's not what I want to do. I'm not going to put down my male counterparts because I'm on this woman pride thing. So that's the difference between womanism and feminism. And Alice Walker, she says that womanism is to feminism as purple is to lavender.
Okay, so I really sometimes feel challenged by only having an hour.
Okay,
so,
sorry.
No, but I am going to ask you to sort of summarize your statement around the broken pew, which is the name of the chapter,
right?
That we are pulling this information from.
Okay.
And then talk a little bit about solutions, like how do we fix it? But first, I'm going to go to a text question that we had from a caller.
Okay.
And I am assuming she's white.
Okay.
Because she mentioned that one thing that women of color do have is safe spaces and camaraderie to discuss these issues. And as a white woman who identifies with some of the issues that you mentioned, she feels as though she doesn't have that space. And so what would you suggest for her and our black women or women of color welcoming two white women as they come in needing to be healed?
Well, I believe that healing is for us all. I believe that I would tell her that as a woman, without putting the race card in that we are very resilient genetically. We are resilient. If we can birth children, the trauma of that, if we can survive that, then that shows us that we are more than conquerors. We are more than overcomers. What I would say for her is sometimes what I found helpful for me, because I've been in situations where I have not had an outlet. And that may be one of the misinterpretations that different people who come from different backgrounds or different cultures, different social dynamics may have. But one of the things that I had to do was create that safe space for myself. Now, here's the thing. I can do it. I'm very able to do it. Do I want to do it by myself? Not really. But if I have to, I will. And so sometimes what I found that has helped me is that by writing this book, by sharing my story, even when no platform would open itself up to me to be able to tell my story, by writing this book, getting it down on paper and sharing it with one other person created a safe space. But remember, here's the other factor that's at the foundation of every relationship: trust. Trust. If you don't feel that you can trust whoever is in your space, then that's something we have to learn. We have to learn how to trust. We have to learn how to be vulnerable. And what I say is be transparent, but not naked. And I say that
naked meaning exposed.
Exposing everything. You do not have to expose everything. The other thing I would suggest for our texter and every woman who is listening is that when we get to a place where we can create a space for ourselves, we have to be forgiving of ourselves for not trusting, getting rid of guilt, getting rid of regret, getting rid of those things so that we can come to another place with something that's a virtue, with hope. The one thing that cancels out the virtue that comes from learning how to trust is learning how to hope. Hope is a spiritual principle.
Is that how we move into fixing the broken pew?
This is, so I'm just talking now.
This is a part of us fixing ourselves,
yes,
which is fixing the broken pew.
Now, the broken pew in this chapter is about a woman, and it's actually about myself. I went into some spaces, and this kind of goes to this text message question as well. I went into some spaces that I thought was supposed to be safe. I had been taught in my life that the church was the safe space. The church was the safe space. The black church was the safe space. Now, part of the reason that I believe that is because my grandfather was the bishop of the church. But I have learned that a lot of the broken people who come into the church are the ones who metaphorically break the pews. So the church no longer becomes a safe space. It becomes a broken space where broken people come to satisfy their basic needs, which are not necessarily spiritual needs, but they need to satisfy their social needs.
Ooh,
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I went so far.
You know what? I think I could sit here and have this conversation with Dr. Robinson all evening, but we got to go to break, and
okay.
I promise you we will make it a quick break. You are turned into What's Going On Rochester. We are talking about Dr. Robinson and her book, I Hope This Helps Someone. So we also hope that it helps you. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back in about a minute or two. You are going.
Okay. We got some people. I'm on Facebook. Is that okay?
Oh. Yes.
Okay.
We got some people asking you some questions on
Not this? Yet. They're just watching. But I will get with now that we're on break. Well, this is not on, right? So I'll get back to you, Sister Beverly. I'll get.
If you want to answer some of your Facebook questions, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
If
okay.
you want to, if we want to come back, and we're going to come back in
about a minute. Yeah.
So if you want to respond to some of your Facebook questions,
okay,
let's do that for the first 5 minutes.
Okay. If you have any questions or anything you want to point out, I'll be watching on this. We're on what is the station? 106.3 FM,
and they can find if you shared the link.
Okay. I don't know where does that. I couldn't find the link.
Did you share the Facebook page?
I didn't find it.
All right.
Okay.
So the Facebook page is What's Going On Rochester.
The Facebook page is What's Going On Rochester. Can somebody please put that in the comments?
And if you go to the Facebook page,
mm-hmm.
they'll see a picture of your book.
Okay.
And they will see the link where they can listen in right
okay.
from their phone.
From the phone. Okay.
They can live stream it.
So if you're on 106.3 is if you're listening, and then go to the Facebook.
I'm going to let this song play out.
Am I answering the questions? I hope I'm answering them all right. I'm doing okay.
I'm just trying to figure out where I want to go in this second half. There's so much to choose from.
Balancing the books is about healing. Is about how to reconcile. Balancing the books. That's chapter 4. Talking about my book. What's the phone number if they want to call in?
585
585
417
417
5435.
Hey, Shelly. No, this is the first book. The new book is I got this new book too. Changing the Narrative, the Challenges of Female Black Clergy in the Black Church.
Mm-hmm.
I'll let you see this one too when you get. This is the new one.
Alrighty, told you that we wouldn't be long. So we are back with Dr. Robinson, author of the book, I Hope This Helps Someone. And we are having a fascinating conversation. And we just concluded the first half with a conversation on what Dr. Robinson calls the broken pew. And I am going to stay close to chapter 2 of her book and read another expert that I want her to break down for us. Because in the first half, we talked about some of the issues that caused the pew to be broken.
So it caused the pew to be broken, right?
Yes. And so now we're going to go into, so there's a statement also in chapter 2, 2:4 to be exact. And it says, naming is an imperative for both the church and the women who sit in the broken pews because it assigns identity to the issues affecting the identity of the individual. Speak to that.
So basically, when you're able to name something, you're able to claim power over it. I think what happens, and when we were talking earlier in the first segment, we were talking about the mental health disparity in the healthcare system as far as the mental health care for Black women. A lot of times we as Black women, we get the names of something. Oh, you have this. Oh, you have that. Oh, this is schizophrenia. This is post-traumatic stress disorder. Oh, this is something disorder. And here's a pill that'll make it all go away. It's not getting to the underlying issue of something happened to me at a time where I couldn't name it. And I never learned how to identify what it is.
So let me just clarify.
Okay.
So to me, it also sounds like you're talking about naming the actual feelings. And when you have gone through trauma, because I am a trauma thriver.
Okay.
Not just survivor.
Right.
Well, I go in and out of
survive and thrive. Right.
I go in and out of victim, thriver, and survivor.
Right.
I go in and out. Right. And so what I have found, one of the hardest questions to answer because of everything you just mentioned. When trauma happens, we can't always, and sometimes it happens at an age that is so young, we can't name the emotion.
Right.
And one of the hardest questions for me to answer when I am feeling something is that question, how do you feel?
How do you feel?
Because I can't necessarily name the emotion.
Right.
Which means I can't put into words how I am feeling because I can't name the emotion.
Right. Right.
And then I become frustrated and impatient with myself and then shut down.
Right. Right. And that's exactly what happens when we're not able to name what it is that is happening to us, or we're not able to articulate what it is that is happening. And this is why the healthy Black church is so important. This is why it's important when we talked about the broken pews. Not being able to name what is ailing you, not knowing or not being able to identify what is coming against you is the most frustrating and re-traumatizing experiences that we can have as Black women. So when we are able to actually articulate and put words to express the feelings that we are experiencing, when we're able to put words and release them, words help us to release whatever that emotion is. It helps us to categorize it. It helps us to identify it. It helps us to also release it into an atmosphere.
Yes, but much of the time, before that release can happen, there has to be safety. We have to come to a place, you think, where we can claim our safe space.
Right.
Because when trauma happens early, especially the issues that you identify in your book, the domestic violence, the childhood sexual abuse, that you said mentions right within the household.
Right.
When we are taught that not to say anything and to say something is wrong. And so even to get up the courage and the strength to name it and reveal it, there has to be level of safety or validation that says it is okay for me to be hurt by this.
Right. And that's what my book, when you start getting, it points us to the place of worship. Because worship, regardless of whether your space is safe and you can talk to your neighbor about something or talk to someone in this social context, when I sing a song, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved the wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. That means something maybe a little different to you, maybe a little different to me. But when we sing it together from a place of knowing, now we can put into words what we were feeling or where we were. Or there's other songs that are in the old hymns that also are used pretty universally. Shackled by a heavy burden, beneath a load of guilt and shame, right? But then the hand of Jesus touched me, and now I am no longer the same. Those type of words that are presented in worship, in a worship atmosphere, provide the safety that we need without really having the safety that's around us. We can come into a place where we meet our Creator, where we're able to now articulate, and then communally, we're able to articulate. So we create a safe space. And that goes back to our text message. We create this safe space for ourselves, but it's not a safe physical, it's not necessarily, and when I get into that book, I talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. So it's not a physiological space. We move up the plane and we move into a spiritual space that is safe. And because
without judgment,
because nobody knows what I'm talking about. I'm singing the song. Right? So it's me and my Creator. It's me and the one who formed my, and I'm being safe for the radio because, everyone doesn't call God, right? But it's the safe space between myself and my Creator. And now I have found a language within the culture of my being that will articulate or help me to name what it is that has been ailing me. And what I'm finding for the postmodern church is that just calling it the devil or calling it Satan is that's not going to suffice, right? Because
get specific, name it.
Name it.
That's what you said. When you can name
you can name something, you can control it. You can have power over it. You can say, I am feeling tired today. I am feeling fatigued today. I am hungry today. I am having flashbacks today. See, no one wants to say those things. And a lot of times we think that we have to say them to someone else. That helps when you have a safe space. But in prayer or meditation, being able to release these emotions into words and into an atmosphere to get them off of your shoulders as a Black woman, as a woman of color, or just as a woman in general.
And not judge them.
And not judge yourself.
So I would be remiss if I did not have this conversation with you.
Okay.
Given your knowledge, given your insight, please, let's talk about strength.
Strength.
And what it looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Because I cannot tell you how many women I come across who sort of get confused, and myself sometimes as well, as to what strength is. Strength does not mean that I have to stand here, take everything that you shoot at me.
Right.
And in order for me to prove that I can take it.
That I can take it.
Yes.
Yeah, no.
Let's talk about strength. Give us your perspective of what a woman's strength could be, or how would you define strength as a woman?
Well, I think everyone has their level of strength. And also everyone has certain places that they are strong in. So I can't really I don't want to make a universal what does strength look like, but I will tell you what adds to our strength. Resiliency, number one. But one of the things that I didn't realize and I can only put this in myself, right? So I didn't realize I was as strong as I am until someone else actually noticed it and actually knew what I had been through and looked at me and said, oh my gosh, you're not in a mental institution. You're not strung out on you're not coping. And I think our coping skills are what actually measure our strength. I can't say what strength looks like, but I can say how it's measured. And so how you cope with a situation, the tools that you have learned, I would say strength requires skill in areas of once again, going back to naming, creating your own safe space, building your house, which not necessarily means but do you use the same methods as a carpenter? Do you have a good foundation? That has a lot. You can build a strong house, but if the foundation is not strong, then your house will collapse. So I believe that strength comes from the foundation. I believe that strength comes from resiliency. As a Black woman, I believe that a lot of our strength comes from being educated and knowing what the elements are coming against us, because we're strategic. We can run complete total households and manage children and still maintain jobs and things of that nature. So we have a plethora of tools that will measure our strength. How we use those tools is what will tell us whether or not we are displaying our strengths. So you can have tools in your toolbox, but if you use a hammer on porcelain glass, it'll break. So you might have a lot of tools, but you're not showing your strength by knowing how to use those tools in appropriate manners or for appropriate situations. So I believe that strength comes from being able to use what you have, to acknowledge what you have, and to be able to use it in a way that advances you. And when you love yourself, then you can love everyone else. And I'll say this: it's a Bible verse where it says, "You love your Creator, you love God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, and your strength, and you love your neighbor as yourself." Self-love is the strongest love.
But that statement is so. I used to find, because as you mentioned, we can't speak universally.
Right.
So it took me almost 45 years of my life to understand that statement. The statement that you just made, that was, you have to love yourself before you can come to love someone else.
Right.
I never understood the depth of that.
Yeah. And it takes a lot because we're nurturers by trade. And for me, even with people that have been in places of abandonment or places, I've been abandoned. I've had a lot of things happen to me. Things that I write about, I did research on because I was actually looking to heal myself. This is why I titled the book, I hope this helps someone, because it helped me. But because I'm a giver and I'm a nurturer, I want to make sure that other people are being helped just the same, who have experienced the same thing that I have experienced in my life. But it took a while for me to understand and adopt the concept of self-love, because uh, children who have been in a state of abuse often are parentized. And I say that as a word. It's actually a word I didn't even know. They're parentized because they have now taken on the role of the parent. And the parent, because of whatever mental illness or sicknesses or addictions that they have taken on the role. So now they are becoming caretakers of the parents. Even in child molestation cases, you're now trying to appease, it's a survival instinct. You're trying to appease your offender. You're trying to appease the one who is literally hurting you.
Domestic violence.
Violence as well. And so now and you can get stuck in that mode. It becomes a behavioral trait that you always, in order to survive, you have to appease your offenders. Well, here's the thing, and this is what I'll say to people who are stuck in that trap. I had to realize that by carrying that type of burden, I was offending myself. So when I said to myself, I am offending myself, I am hurting myself by taking on this type of behavioral trait, I need to stop the madness. I need to stop putting the same behavioral response to everyone thinking that I need to survive. I have to believe in the fact that I have made it. Someone had to make it very plain to me and tell me. And I think I heard it across a pulpit, and I probably have said it across a pulpit, that everything that you have right now today, you were destined to have. You were designed to have. Everything that you have endured, you have been designed to endure. If it could have been any different, it would have been. I say that to myself because I have to realize that I was able to do the best I could with what I had at the time. I also learned to release people by forgiving not their actions, but forgiving the condition that they were in when they committed the actions that they did.
Okay.
I know we're running out of time.
She goes. So let's talk about forgiveness.
Yeah, we got it. Yeah.
Who is forgiveness for?
Forgiveness, I believe, is for myself. I said this to my sister the other day, and I was telling her we have to be careful. And people who speak the Black church language or any type of spiritual language will understand. In the Old Testament, whenever there was a threat, people would run into, in Israel, I'm talking about the Bible, scriptures in Israel, people would run into what they would call a strong tower or a stronghold. Now, if you watched any medieval type of movies, you'll see this big tower. Like you think of a strong tower or stronghold like Rapunzel, the tower that she was in, right? And they run into this place to find safety because it's thick walls, tall walls, and it's got like a storage for it. But we have to be careful that we don't get so afraid that we end up letting the stronghold become a prison for us. The very thing that we run to for safety now becomes such a safe space that we don't even want to come out.
It becomes a coping mechanism.
It becomes another coping mechanism. And then that's where you show your strength, right? If you want to just stay in there, if you stay in the house, a lot of people who can relate to this, COVID has made our arms a little flabby and, we haven't been getting out like we're supposed to be, right? So the thing about forgiveness, when I talk about forgiveness, I talk about forgiveness being for myself, because some people can lock you in that place. They can lock you. If I lock the door from the outside of your stronghold or your safe space, now you can't get out of that space. And so forgiveness actually is for the person who is offering it. It's the forgiveness is offering for, because the first place you have to forgive is for yourself, which means you have to be accountable for your own actions. A lot of people who have been traumatized by rape, by domestic violence, by childhood sexual abuse, by abandonment, any type of those traumatic issues, a lot of those people have a hard time forgiving themselves first. And the reason why is because by the time that they realize that what they've been carrying has been so detrimental to their development, they start to hold guilt and start to hold regret for holding it for so long.
Mm-hmm. Who would I have been?
If I didn't do this, or if this just would have happened? and I wanted my bishop is on the line, and one of the things that he said to me that stuck with me was live your life without regret. And then when he said that to me, that's when I said, you know what? If things could have been different for me, they would have been different for me. But I'm not going to live my life with any regret, because I did the best I could with what I had, with the tools that I had.
Yes. So I hope this helps someone.
Yep. I hope this helps someone.
The name of your book, and I certainly appreciate you and am thankful for your journey that led to the writing of that book, because thus far it has certainly helped me.
Oh, good.
And I want you to tell folks two things.
Okay.
How can they get a copy of this book?
Okay.
And how can they reach out to you for a show, for inspiration, for a presentation, for anything of that nature, should they want to reach out?
Okay, if anyone wants to reach me, they can definitely go to the website. I do have a website. It's drdjrobinson.com. And my phone number, email address, everything is on the website. Information how you can get the book. The book is self-published. So I'm now starting to write in the beginning of my book when I said, just like life, this book has flaws. And so, so it's self-published, and but it is available on Kindle, and it's also available on Amazon Prime. What they would want to do, and I also have it in large print. I actually made a new copy in large print. Yes.
Before I got the small print.
I'm sorry.
Because when I go to read and I cannot find my glasses, because Robin and I, what we have started, we read it together.
Okay.
Because it takes me, your words take me to a place of reflection.
Right.
That leaves me, as what we discuss, exposed and vulnerable.
Right.
So to share this reading with someone is really helpful, because
right, exactly. And that's also, I applaud you for that, because that's your initiative of creating your own safe space. And so, hey, read this book with me, use it, because that shows your strength. You're using this now as a tool. And there's nothing more burdensome than carrying a tool that is not useful.
Yes. Ladies, if you have a book club, I would encourage you to make this book one of your topics of discussion. I hope this helps someone. A womanistic response to spiritual and psychological trauma. So, Dr. Robinson,
yes,
if you could leave our listeners with one thought today, what would it be? And take some time to explain it.
I would just encourage anyone who is hurting right now from guilt and grief from their past. A lot of times when trauma happens to us, it inflicts a certain amount of pain where we find ourselves wounded. And some people, it almost is, and if you don't clean the wounds, I hope everybody can hear the picture, that sometimes it can become infected, and it can also become amputated. And there are some people who have been wounded, they've been infected, and they've had to amputate certain parts of their lives and haven't had the opportunity to grieve over that loss. Loss of your childhood, loss of relationships, loss of yourself. My prayer and word of encouragement is that you will find yourself to know that you are stronger than you thought. How do you know that you're stronger? Because you're still here, number one. Because you're listening to this broadcast. Because you're starting to have those conversations. That's how you know how strong you are. So my encouragement is to tell you, go ahead and grieve. Go ahead and feel those feelings of guilt and loss. But do not stay in the stronghold. Do not stay in that space of victimization, but name it, take power over it, and keep moving, and share your story, whether it be in worship, whether it be in find a place, an outlet to articulate what has happened and where you are and where you want to be. The first fundamental, and this is my closing statement, of adult development, the first virtue is hope. So when you learn how to trust, you learn how to hope. My prayer for every listener, for every woman, for every man, for every person who has been traumatized in their life, is that you will find a place of trust within yourself first, and then with others, and that your hope will be restored. This is why I said, I hope that this helps someone.
You've been listening to Rochester Free Radio. What's going on, Rochester? I hope this helps someone with our guest, Dr. Robinson. I hope you were helped during this hour. It was our pleasure to be with you. So until next week, be open, be honest, be you.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Thank you for staying with me. I hope that this helped you today, and I'm going to leave it up, and we'll put it on our our YouTube page. I'll put it on my YouTube page. I just want to thank each and every one of you for praying with me and praying through. Yep. I'm gonna. Okay, so I'll have, if you go to drdjrobinson.com, you can pick up a copy of the book, or just inbox me or message me. I'm going to get off now. I love each and every one of you. Have a good night.